Two words that took the internet by storm: bullet journal. The bullet journal is an amazing method for organizing your life and living intentionally using pen and paper. Millions of people have been helped by this method, and it's all due to this simple yet profound framework for something that everyone is familiar with: the pen and paper. And the bullet journal is this easy system for organizing your life, taking care of the things that need to get done, remembering all the important things in life, and doing something about them, making sure that they don't get forgotten, but that you don't feel overwhelmed with the amount of things that come out of your brain, which, if you're like me, is nonstop, right? It keeps you up at night. Now, in our world today, we have access to digital tools like Notion that can really revolutionize these systems. A lot of people have recreated what they would call that bullet journal, but it's actually not following the bullet journal methodology. There's no daily migration, there's no intentional looking at what you had yesterday and deciding whether it should belong in today's page and rewriting it. If you've ever looked at the bullet journal on Google, you'll probably be overwhelmed with the most amazing but yet complicated illustrations and flowers and designs and layouts. And it makes you think, that's not for me. I don't know what that is, but that's not me. And yet, the original bullet journal method is very simple. It's bare bones basic, just average handwriting. If you go back and look at the original videos, there's nothing crazy or special or artistic to it. It's just a very simple system for you to use and then expand as you want. And so that's why it was so compelling to me to create a digital alternative to this while still following some of the same things from the original bullet journal method that really unlocked this kind of systematic approach to life. And so that is where the Perspectives Journal hit the scene. I had to create something that actually felt like that analog pen and paper journal, but in the digital world. And it actually unlocked this ability for me to feel like I was staying on top of my day, on top of my life, and I knew where to put something because I didn't have a million options. And so I hope that you can also find this feeling of being on top of your life, of feeling organized, of feeling intentional, and unlocking a lot of just clarity in life because of this new way of approaching Notion and the bullet journal combined into what I call the Perspectives Journal. So in this video, I'm going to show you a breakdown and overview of that. I think I call it the bullet journal throughout this. We're gonna just brand it and call it the Perspectives Journal. And through this video, I'm gonna show you how this works and all the different pieces that go into this to make it something really useful. If you want to pick up the Perspectives Journal for yourself, I'm gonna leave a link in the description where you can go and find it and purchase it. And I hope that you find it as helpful as I have and that it brings clarity and intentionality to your life. For the rest of this year, 2023, I'm also going to put a little discount on it so that you can get started in 2024 with a brand new start. This is the Perspectives Journal. I hope you enjoy. Jumping into Notion, you'll see I'm at my terminal and just a little sneak peek at what's going on here, but this is kind of my home screen. Think of this like your desktop on your computer. These are shortcuts to your applications, and the application we're going to jump into is the bullet journal. If you want to know more about what's going on here and what I mean by perspectives, if you've never heard of that, look at my previous videos. I've outlined the perspectives a couple different times, so check that out, especially if you want to learn how to do it yourself. So before you get a little confused with what's happening and what I'm about to show you, you'll get a really good grasp of how it all goes together if you go back and look at those videos. So I'm going to avoid telling you exactly how to set up perspectives, not because I'm trying to hide it, but because I've already given you some resources for that. But in those cases, what I was doing was taking the perspectives and putting in a bunch of different databases and kind of bringing a bunch of different things into one spot. There's another flavor to perspectives, which is just using the perspectives for one data object. And you get a really cool effect when you do that. So we'll see that with the bullet journal. This is kind of the bullet journal home screen. Think of this like your index. Think about a paper bullet journal. The first 2 or 4 pages are dedicated to the index. And this is where you write down all of the different spreads that you've created in your bullet journal, and you write down the page that they're in. Well, when you put it into a digital space, you don't necessarily need to keep track of page numbers, but you do want a spot to find out how to get to the page you're looking for. And in this case, this is exactly what we're showing in the index. So I've got a bunch of different spreads. A lot of these will look really familiar if you're familiar with the bullet journal system already, with a couple of options that are somewhat official, like the weekly spread. That's only been a recent addition officially to the bullet journal system, even though people have been doing it for years. But then you'll see project and reference. These are actually collections, again, if you're familiar. And then dynamic, I'll get to that at the end of this video. But right now we're looking at the index, and then we've got the key, just to stick to the bullet journal system. So this is our index. We're seeing all of our pages. And the benefit of doing it in Notion is that we get to show these pages in a bunch of different ways. In this case, we're looking at a board separated by all of those spread types. So as you build them out, they'll just show up there automatically. And then this is let's call this the traditional view. When you're in a paper journal, it's all chronological, and especially when you write it in pen, once you write that page down, you're not able to rearrange it. And I think that there is something wired into our brain where chronological order is actually very memorable. It's very powerful to actually constrain yourself to only chronological order. And that's what a lot of this system is built on, and a lot of the benefit comes from. So in this case, I call it the log, and you'll actually see it over here. Not to confuse you with these, every other page you won't see it like this, but this is the log that shows up on every page, on the side of every page. This is basically like you flipping pages. And so this is all in chronological order. It's sorted by created date descending. So when whatever order you created in, you got to stick to it. There's no resorting this and changing it around. I mean, you can, but you're going to break it, and you're really going to lose a lot of the charm and the benefit of the system. So this is kind of that traditional view, and you're going to see this in every other page. And then I've added in the ability to bookmark some things. So in the analog system, this would be like you putting a little tab on the page, or your little string thing that you put through the pages. And then just by type, we're breaking them out by type, so you can kind of get a quick look at what you're looking for. And then an archive feature. So, let's say this set Q4 team goals. Apparently, looks like I'm not actually doing much work on that. This is all just dummy data. If I archive it, and I'm just going to go back to the index page, you'll see that it is archived right here. So I'm going to go ahead and unarchive that. We're back at the index, and I can get there by pressing this, link over here, and this is going to show up everywhere again because it's a synced block. But you can also see I've got navigation back to that home page that you saw. So terminal, bullet journal, always there. I can click on week 41 and then just go right back to the index, and no more archived. So back to the board. These are all of our pages in our bullet journal. All right, I'm going to show you the key page because that is a good jumping off point for everything I'm about to show you. So if you're familiar with bullet journal, this will make a lot of sense. But if you're not, it's going to be pretty important to understand how this works. And it's very simple. It's really not that hard. This is the basic system that is provided and shown by the creator of the bullet journal, Ryder Carroll. But if you've ever Googled bullet journal, you'll see a million different versions, a lot of pretty animations and over-the-top floral designs and things like that. It makes you feel like you're really bad at art, if you are like me. But realistically, down to the core of the bullet journal, you don't need any of that. What's really important is these few signifiers beside each of your notes. This is mimicking the analog version. So before every task, just write a little dot. Before every note, you can write a little dash, and then before every event, a little circle. Every item in your log or your journal will have one of those three. And if you have some more signifiers that you'd like to add, really easy, just add another signifier. I'm just going to provide these three. Now, next to all of those, you can mark it complete or deferred. In the bullet journal parlance, called migrated or deleted. Deleted, you'd cross out the whole thing, but we're working with what we got. And then you can signify it with whether it's important or a question or an important question. Again, you can expand this to however many signifiers you need. Every item in the log should have at least the type signified. I've got this grouped, and I think it's a really good first showcase of why this digital version of the bullet journal actually has some benefits that you don't get out of the analog version. Now, we don't want to go crazy because we don't want to get away from the core heart of what makes the bullet journal amazing. But the fact is, when you write with pen and paper, once you write it down, there's no rearranging it. And so one cool thing is that we're able to group these by their type. And I think this is a really simple modification that has great benefits for doing it. So normally, what you would see is nothing. There'd be no group. And in fact, these might have been created in a bunch of different orders. And so, you know, as you're thinking of them throughout the day, they could look like this. And you've got notes and events and all that stuff. Now, you can leave this as a really simple list, and this is way more pure bullet journal, but we can be a little organized, right? If you left it like this, you could just manually kind of change these things around. Or what we could do is sort them by the type, by its type right here. So we could do that. But then, you know, what you still have to do is new thing. And then you have to go in here and click what type it is. So why don't we take advantage of Notion in its little ways that will make this the best digital bullet journal possible, and we just group by the type. And let's reorder it back to where it was. I actually like to put the events at the top in this case. So it's like my calendar. So first thing in the morning, I just write down all my calendar events for the day. And yes, I have it in my calendar, but what's really helpful is that there's this daily ritual of just checking the calendar, putting it in here, and then I don't forget things when they come up. And then we've got the tasks down below it and all of our notes down below that as well. I think I like to have this hidden. So what's cool about this is that when you want to add a new one, you don't have to signify the type because you're already adding it to the group. So if I want to add a new event, 4:30, record, Notion, video. I love how this thing is showing all of my capital letters down at the bottom. I think that this is a great compromise between an analog and a digital version. And so now we're able to see everyday events, tasks, and notes. Now, the way the bullet journal works is that when tomorrow comes around, or in this case, let's say today, we create a new page and then we flip back to the old one and we go down and we double check and we review and we decide if we want to move something to the next day if it hasn't been done. Or if we keep doing that a bunch of times, we kind of realize maybe this isn't actually a priority for me. Let's just delete it. Clearly, I'm not making time for it. So I'm going to make a new today page and show you what that process looks like. One thing that I've added to this is these little buttons right here, color coded by the types. And as you become familiar with the colors, this will make a lot of sense. You can even see a few of them down on this list. This is that chronological page list, just like you would have in a real journal. And so these were all created in order. So we've got our weeks in blue, our information in yellow, months in green, projects in red, and I believe down at the bottom, yeah, we've got our future log in purple and our key and all of that. So I want to create a new daily page, and I've got templates for all of these pages in this database, and this is what they look like. Now I could press new right here and then choose the template. That'd be totally fine. But I've also created this toolbar up here since pages are created at least once every day, probably a couple times when you start working in projects and such. So we'll create a new page, and you can see it's already dynamically titled today, and then it will update as time goes on, just like this. And so now we've got a new daily page, and the way this works is we go back to yesterday. You don't really need to defer or migrate your events, but you can just kind of go through, and if you want to make notes on any of these, this would be the time to do so if you forgot anything. But we'll just kind of go and review what we did or maybe what we missed. But usually these are scheduled and you can't miss them, not necessarily plans to do tasks or anything like that. But again, use it however you want. That's the beauty of the bullet journal. Now we come down to our tasks, and it looks like yesterday already marked this complete, but a lot of times you get to the end of the day and you just haven't gone through your list again. And so we'll go through, and maybe I did get my oil changed, so we'll mark that an X. And then let's see, buy a gift for mom's birthday. I forgot, and it looks like that was really important. So I definitely need to do that today. I'm going to mark that as deferred, flip over to today, and type in buy mom's gift. All right, and then we go back to yesterday, finalize Q4 goals. Let's say I'm slacking and I forgot to do that too. Finalize Q4 goals. I've even got a project for it right here. So let's say finalize Q4 goals, and we've got that. And let's actually make sure that we mark these as significant. and we go through this list. This is called migration, and this is a key ritual in the bullet journal method. You want to do this every day, and it might seem tedious, but this is actually where we take advantage of what it means to be human, and that's the fact that we forget. And so going over this again every time is actually really helpful to not only keep your task list up to date, but to remind yourself of things that you maybe forgot about and keep them top of mind. We're really good at forgetting. Next step on James's ideas. Looks like that was a question. I wasn't sure. Let's just say I talked to somebody and they said James's ideas were really stupid, and I'm not going to do anything about that. So let's just delete that. Dinner reservations. Let's say I completed that. And that new thing that I added, let's defer that to today. New thing. So here's the key to every migration. You just want to make sure that this column is not empty. You want to decide what you're going to do with every single one of these actions. So you either completed it, you migrated it, or you deleted it, decided it's not worth doing or migrating, which is totally fine. That's the whole point of migrating. Maybe I had this in my list for 2 weeks, and I finally just came to the point where I realized, okay, I'm not going to do this. Let's just delete it. You still have a record of it. It's still in your bullet journal, and you can kind of see where in the process you decided to make the decision to not take any more next steps. So that's kind of a cool concept of repeating yourself every day, is that you actually can go back and see a history of your decisions and your prioritizations in your work. And then we'll just, we're going through these notes, and I might, open these up and check these out. Obviously these are empty, but see if there's anything actionable on them that I want to kind of transfer into today. But let's say there's not. And so now we are ready for the next day. And that was a daily migration. Now, I'm not going to go into what it means to bullet journal the whole way, but that's a pretty key and core concept to bullet journaling. There are rituals for and different setups for monthly pages and weekly pages. Let me stress this again one more time, that as much as there's a structure for these things in a bullet journal, you can use them however you want to make sense of your life and your work. This is just like bare bones how the bullet journal works at its core, but again, feel free to expand this as you want. This is just a system. You're fully capable of changing this to fit whatever you are doing. You can see that I've got all these pages that are coming along in chronological order, and every day I would create a new daily page, do that same process, and then at the beginning of a week I might create a new weekly page and decide to go through my weekly ritual and reflect on the last week, maybe talk about the next week and what I want out of it, and put down some notes. Let's look at the last weekly page. I've got this broken down by day of the week, and so I can kind of decide, okay, Monday I kind of want to do this, Tuesday I want to do this, Wednesday, so on and so forth. You could change this as much as you wanted. None of these items will show up anywhere else. I've built this to use the same database, so these are all actually in the same database, but they're filtered really almost kind of stupid, but it actually works really well for what we're trying to accomplish. They're just assigned a random section. As long as no other piece on the page is assigned to that section because they're related to a specific journal, they won't show up anywhere else, except for those dynamic pages. And I'll show you what those are in a second. I could add as many modules of this linked database as I want if I wanted to. And that's actually how this originally was. I had a Monday module and then a Tuesday and a Wednesday. And instead I just broke it up by day of the week in this way because it just looks a lot cleaner. But again, you can do whatever you want. And the monthly view, a typical bullet journal, at least in the traditional way, you would write the day of the month, the number of the month, and then the day of the week. And then if there was anything date oriented for those calendar days, that's basically like your simple calendar. We can take advantage of some of the benefits of Notion. And so might as well just use a calendar and put events in your calendar if that's what you want to do. But this is for keeping track of all of the things within the month. And then as you come up on them in the day, you can port them into your day. Most people, at least in the traditional bullet journal method, don't use monthly and weekly. But again, you can do whatever you want, and then can write down maybe a running task list of things you want to get done this month but that you don't necessarily want to put into the today. And this is where those expanding kind of horizons of time really start to benefit you, is where if you know it's going to be needed to be done within a certain time frame, let's say this month you've created the monthly page, then you can start writing it in the month. But if it's beyond the current month, that's where the future log comes in. Here's the future log. And here you can see kind of the different modules that I have. And this is where you would write in date specific things that you want to get done, or at least within the realm of a month for 6 months out. And then as that month kind of rolls around and you create a monthly page for it, you then start using that one and you migrate things out of here into that monthly page. And then as the day comes up, you can migrate it out of the monthly page into the day, and so on and so forth. And just a note on this, I actually have this filter set up to where it should only show the most recent pages within the last month. Created is on or after 1 month ago, but because I created this, more as a showcase, the created dates were basically a few days ago. So even though they show these past dates, when this is actually used and each page is created on the right day, you'll only see a list of the last 30 daily pages. You will still see all of the other pages, like weekly and monthly pages, until they get archived, and then they'll disappear. So kind of keeps this list a little curated and a little reasonable. But again, you can adjust that filter if you want. So that is kind of bullet journaling in a nutshell. So then you might ask, well, how do I keep track of things that are kind of centered around the same theme or the same thing? Usually it's a project. Projects are supported in the bullet journal, and this is what is called a collection. In the paper bullet journal, you would just dedicate a new spread, and a spread is just 2 pages, 2 flat pages, side by side. So just go to the next empty spread, and that's what you would call your project collection. And you can go beyond those 2 pages, but that's just where you would start. And then you go to your index and write down the page that project starts. So we totally have that capacity in this case, and I've got the collection for a project designated, and then I've also got a collection specifically for just information gathering, more long-term collection. So like recipe tracker or a movie tracker or things like that, where you just want to keep this reference of things for a while, whereas a project is kind of meant to be completed at a certain point in time. And I broke those out for a reason, because again, we're going to take one step outside of the traditional realm and do a little bit of project management in Notion. And so that's why they're designated differently. So these projects in the red pages, they just look like the daily pages. They're very similar. You've got events, tasks, and notes. And so you can start filling out important information about a project here. And then whenever you want to expand on it, let's say, brainstorm ideas. Let's say we had a brainstorming session on a certain day. So now here's where I brainstorm my ideas. And so you can see kind of how this is a really simple collection of things for a project specifically. And you can create new entries and embed items in there, or drop files in there, or photos, or Miro boards, or whatever you need. And in fact, if you want to go beyond that and create it below here, that's totally fine too. Sometimes I like to just press enter, and right above here, create a new call out called Scratchpad, and then I'll take notes here, just to kind of make it a little bit more free flowing. And then once they've developed into something, I might copy paste them into one of the more designated areas over here and delete it from there. So again, use it however you want. And then the information is something more like a recipe tracker. So this is just the template. Again, this is dummy data. So if I was trying to track a recipe, I might actually just ditch this bullet journal table completely and just make my own version. So I could create a new database table inline here, just keep it in this, because this is really the only place it belongs, and then start keeping track of my recipes. So that would look like deleting it. Let's just call that tracker, and then making a table and just putting it right up in here, recipes, and mom's fried chicken. There we go. So you can start to keep track of your recipes, and as you're familiar with Notion, I'm sure you can figure out cool ways to keep track of your recipes. That's not what this video is for, but just showing you how something that lasts longer than a project that you kind of want an ongoing reference for. That's what the reference spread is designated for, the reference collection. Okay, so I've been kind of teasing this out. There's a few features that we use that go beyond traditional bullet journaling, and one of those I like to call dynamics. And even I just kind of popped it out as a sneak peek, but right here you can actually filter different views. So in the same way that we had all of these filtered views of our different spreads on the index page, we also have them right here on this page. And so you can see and filter this. So if we just want to see projects, we can just go to projects until they're archived and then they won't show up. And then if we want to see what I'm going to call dynamics, I don't have any apparently, but we're going to create a new one. So a dynamic would be something like a project manager. So this is going outside the realm of bullet journaling, but within the capabilities of Notion. And so everything up to this point, when you create it on one page, it stays on that page and you have to migrate it to get it somewhere else. In this case, we want to take advantage of those dynamic features of Notion just a little bit. We don't want to overdo it because we don't want to kind of get past what the bullet journaling method is all about, but let's just, see what we can create with it. So let's say I want a project manager because I want to see all of my projects in one spot and be able to kind of see their progress, or even see what about all the tasks that are in my system that are between a bunch of different projects and daily pages. And instead of having to go to each one of those pages to see what is not done, because some may still live in the project page, even though you're migrating every day in your daily pages, let's see them all in one spot so I can just get an overview of all of the things in my system and keep it up to date. So we'll create a project manager. It's a dynamic. So in this project manager, I've got a template of both the spreads, which is the pages in the actual database of all these pages that I'm looking at, but then also the database of the bullets. And I just put it in here as a quick, easy access, but this should be changed and filtered according to what you're looking for. So I think I actually want to use both. I want to use the spreads to show all of my projects that are not archived. So let's do filter, and let's do spread is project, and archived is unchecked. This is the bookmark, so that's not archived, but there is an archive checkbox. And let's say I want to see these on a status board, like a typical Kanban board, and I don't have a status set up. So for this case, I'll make a status, project status, and let's change the layout to the board, make them a little bigger. And now we've got a board. So these are all of the projects. And let's say I haven't gotten started on the team goals, but I am planning the Utah vacation. And let's say I bought a new car. This buy a new car as a project, it's done. That doesn't necessarily mean that I've archived the page. I can archive it if I'm totally done with this, but I can leave it in my system. And so it's still going to show up in the logs over here, right down here, because maybe I still want that in my pages and I want to go back and reference it for a little bit. And then when I'm finally done, I can archive it, but you can always unarchive it as well. So this is just an example of what that might look like. This might be project board. But let's say I want to see all of my tasks like I was talking about. I want to show all tasks, and then I want to filter them where, no, I don't want that. I want to filter them, and then I want to filter them by status is empty. I don't want to see any that are complete. I don't want to see any that are migrated, because migrated means that it got duplicated somewhere else, and I don't want to see any that are deleted. So I want to show status is empty, and here we go. Now we've got a list of all of our tasks that are in our system. And actually, one thing that we don't want to do is we don't want to see this one, because this one belongs to the key. If you remember, this is what the key page looks like. So let's filter that out as well. And I'm making this from scratch, so keep this in mind when you make things from scratch, but otherwise everything else should be kind of squared away. So let's filter out journal. It does not contain key. And looks like we have a blank, so we'll delete that. All right, looks like in week 41, we have some tasks: do a workout and eat a hamburger. Let's go check week 41. There it is, eat a hamburger, do a workout. So maybe for Thursday, we plan to write script for bullet journal video. And then we assign it the task. It's gonna pop up right here. And we'll just, we'll call that done. So it's now done. Writing the script for the video is now done, and you'll see it over here. If you're familiar with Notion, this is how it works. It's done. It's just one object, but now we're showing it dynamically in a bunch of different places. And that's why I called this spread dynamic, because every other spread in this template is not dynamic intentionally, but we still have the power to do a little more with this. So we actually don't want to see the project status because this page itself is not a project. We'll just always hide that because we only really want to see it for this view right here. And so now we've got tasks, and now we can kind of see all of our tasks. So if you're worried about putting a task in a project and then a task in a week and a task in a day and all those things, this is a good way to kind of see the biggest view possible, is see your whole system in one spot and filter this accordingly. So if you don't want to see your weekly tasks, you can filter those out and only see your tasks in your daily pages, or maybe you only want to see tasks that belong to a project so that you see all of your project tasks, but maybe not your daily tasks. You could do that by using a roll-up. So let's do that real quick. Let's duplicate this. What we want to do in this case, and actually none are going to show up, so let's make a few real quick. Task 1, task 2, task 3. Okay, let's go back to the project manager. Right here, what we want to do is actually only see tasks where the journal is a project. So we need to use a roll-up. So we're going to create a roll-up to find out what type of journal it is. We want to get that property from it. So project type. Hey, it's editor Josh from the future, kind of, and I'm bald, I'm sorry. I made a mistake. What I meant to say was spread type, not project type. What we're doing with this roll-up is getting the type of the spread that the bullet belongs to. So I only want to see the bullets that belong to a spread or journal that is a project, and not a daily page or a weekly page or any of those other types. So I'm actually going to clarify that in like 20-30 seconds, but I just wanted to catch you before you got too confused and quit on me. So carry on. We're going to go off of journal and then get the spread. So we want to show the spread types. And so now you can see these three are, well, you know, this one journal is the project type, or the spread type is project. And then these are from daily pages, these are from weekly pages. So now we can filter to only show tasks where project type is project. And so now anytime you create one in a project, let's go to a different one, Utah vacation, go to Arches. Amazing spot, by the way. We actually did this in 2023. Highly recommend. Okay, now we can see go to Arches is in Utah vacation 2024. And so I can mark this complete from here if I want. I typically don't like using roll-ups in these kind of views as a filter because it makes it pretty unintuitive and kind of broken to create a new item. Because we're using something from a different database to filter, that means that when I create a new one, it cannot make the thing fit that criteria. I have to go and assign it to a project spread, right? So if I create a new one, you'll see that the project type is empty because it doesn't know what journal I want to connect this to, and it doesn't know what type it is. And so what's going to happen is I could create something here, and if I get out of this without attaching it to a journal, it's not going to show up in this view. So it's really unintuitive to be able to create something new in a view, but then it doesn't show up. And that's why I typically avoid using rollups as filters. However, in this case, because we're using the constraints of the bullet journal, you should not be creating items in this view. If you really know what you're doing and you really want to, I mean, by all means, power to you, it's your system. That's why this is called a dynamic page, and that's why this is really set apart as its own kind of page. This is just supposed to be more of a view only, or a change the status of the information, but not create new things. You should create the things in the pages that they belong to. And this is just more of an aggregation and a collection of all of those from different places. That's where we're taking advantage of Notion in a really cool way, in a way that I really like. And so this is one example of a project manager dynamic. You can create whatever dynamics you want. One idea would maybe be doing this, but instead of tasks, you do it for your notes, and you create some sort of statusing for your notes to kind of keep track of your ideas. Maybe you create a signifier for really important notes, or maybe it's more of like a PKM kind of note if you're familiar with personal knowledge management. And so you can signify those notes, and then wherever they are created, you can be assured that they're going to show up in maybe a PKM dynamic. And so a cool way to create them where they make sense, like every day. You don't have to jump somewhere else to make them, but then you're able to collect them in another spot and work further on them in these dynamic spreads. So you'll notice I do not have one of these buttons laid out for these dynamics. I think these should be used really intentionally and sparingly. There is a template for them right down here. And so all you have to do is create a new page, and then like you saw, I use the template for the dynamic, but it's not really something you should be doing a bunch, and so that's why I've left it out. And in fact, the way I had this originally filtered, I might have to update this. I don't think, it's my preference that the dynamics would not show up in the log. These are going to be pretty long standing pages, and so for them to kind of go down the chronological list, I didn't really care for that. And so I actually had a view just for dynamics that I was going to use for that. I need to adjust the filter, but that's my preference. And so I'm probably going to filter those out. And then I need to make sure that the filter filters out all of those things that are archived. I don't want to see anything archived in my log, but I want to keep that pretty intuitive and simple over there. I don't want to get too crazy with it. So that would be my preference, and that's how I'm going to build this template. But anyways, that is a pretty thorough walkthrough of this bullet journal template. And just going back to the homepage, this is where we're at. This is our journal, and you can see as you create new items, you're going to have a running list of all your history. And because you migrate and continue to keep things updated, just because there's a bunch of pages doesn't mean that you're going to have to go and try and find where you left something. That's where normal journaling is different than bullet journaling. Bullet journaling took regular journaling and just added a small little system to it of migration and marking things with signifiers and types in a really simple way to really make journaling just really powerful and systematic, but not so systematic that it kind of forced you into sticking to one thing. There's a really cool compromise between those, and that's what I love about it. That's where I think the perspectives method really shines, is it's a little bit of structure to Notion by using these perspectives, but it's not telling you exactly how to use Notion. I'm not forcing you into some project management workflow or whatever, but just kind of giving you the structure or the form for maybe how to do work a little bit more intuitively and efficiently. And going back to the terminal, the same way you saw this bullet journal workout, I've got each of these different apps working in a different way. So project manager, it's going to show me a perspective for projects and tasks and things like that. I wouldn't use it with the bullet journal. This is a totally different system for project management. But as a standalone application for all of life, which is what a lot of people could benefit from, and they don't need a bunch of different complicated workflows, this handles it really well. And I really like this approach, and I've used it for months and I love it. And so just wanted to create something that other people might find useful. Let me know what you think and how you might expand on this, because one thing is for sure, there's not one way to do a bullet journal. There are many ways to do a bullet journal. And so I'm excited to see how other people take this simple system and expand it to use for what they're doing in their Notion workspace. So let me know what you think of the bullet journal, and I would love to see some screenshots and share with others how they can improve their lives using a simple system like this.